1 year ago today, the first known case of coronavirus infection was recorded in China's Hubei province, home to Wuhan, now known the world over as the original virus epicenter. Special correspondent Patrick Falk went to Wuhan to try and piece together parts of the puzzle and see how China is shaping the story of what happened there.
It's hard to imagine this place was once on the front line of China's coronavirus outbreak. Tinyintan Hospital in the north of Wuhan treated some of the world's first COVID-19 patients nearly a year ago. Few cars or even people come in and out of the premises now. In the early days of the outbreak, wards here were bursting. Just a short walk around the corner from the hospital, authorities converted this expo center into a shelter to treat the sick. Wuhan was the hardest hit place in China, accounting for more than half of all the country's cases and the bulk of its officially reported roughly 4,500 deaths. The center is now housing an exhibition commemorating China's battle against the virus.
I think pride belongs to every one of us Chinese because we have successfully fought against the coronavirus under the call of the party and the country and actively fought against it under the leadership of the government.
This is an audio-visual journey that details Chinese Communist Party-led efforts against COVID-19, complete with a timeline of events, according to Chinese authorities, of how they unfolded. There's a tribute also to medics who died fighting the outbreak, including Li Wenliang, the whistleblower doctor silenced by officials for trying to warn the world about the disease and whose death sparked outrage. Anger over his fate and a perceived cover-up in the early days of the crisis has been turned into a story of sacrifice by a national hero. It's the story of Wuhan the government wants to tell.
This behind me is what's left of the Huanan wet market, what many people believe to be the source, the original source of COVID-19. There are no businesses operating inside anymore, and many of the other businesses around the outside, including eateries in particular, remain shuttered as well.
Filming here is not welcome. That's despite there being little to see. People used to sell everything from live animals to seafood at this market. There's barely any sign now that it ever even existed. Scientists believe the virus may have originated in bats and that it was passed on to humans via another animal species. But there are doubts about whether this is where the outbreak began. Although many early cases were linked to the market, no animal here was identified as a source of infection. Lai Yun owns a Japanese restaurant in Wuhan. He lives close to the market and before the outbreak used to buy some of his supplies there.
Hubei is not a province that likes to eat wild animals. There's no such thing as bats as mentioned on the internet. Certainly not.
If true, that would seem to rule out the possibility of any jump from bats, at least in Huanan market. Chinese scientists have also backed away from assertions they made previously that the market may have been the source of the virus. Meanwhile, Beijing's resisted global pressure to allow outsiders access to get to the bottom of its origin. In May, months after the first case and the virus exploded worldwide, President Xi Jinping endorsed a World Health Organization-led investigation. Reports say a two-person team from the WHO came in July, but they never went to Wuhan during the entire three-week trip. To date, there's still been no independent probe on the origins of COVID-19 conducted from China's outbreak epicenter. Dr. Bruce Gillen is president of Global Immunization at the Sabin Vaccine Institute and regular consultant to the WHO. He says it's now too late.
Looking at something 6 months later, it may be hard to reconstruct it. So these kind of investigations need to be happening as quickly as possible. Getting the teams in there that know how to do these as quickly as possible to understand what's happening and to unveil any evidence that may be there.
The lack of access given to outsiders has raised doubt over China's commitment to identifying the source of the virus. It's also helped fuel alternative theories, including the possibility that it might have leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which had been conducting research on coronaviruses. There's no known evidence to suggest that happened. Professor Ivan Hung is chief of Hong Kong University's Infectious Diseases Division. He says he thinks the criticism of China is unfair.
The thing that you can probably comment on is the local government in Wuhan. Then probably they have not been very responsive, and of course they probably has cleaned up the market before they're able to have any proper investigation being done.
In a rush to curb the spread of the virus, it's understandable, experts say, that local officials might have rushed to disinfect Huanan Market instead of preserving evidence. Still, China could do much more to shake off accusations of a lack of transparency, and there are calls for the WHO to be given greater powers to obtain information.
They are interfacing with their member states, and they have to abide by what the member states' wishes are. That's obviously a problem if the member state wishes not to have WHO tell others about that information. And I think we need to take a hard look at those to make sure the international health regulations, which are put in place for things like this, so we have global health security, are they able to do what we need them to do?
Unless that's addressed, the world may be no better off at defending itself against pandemics in the future. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Patrick Falk in Wuhan.